Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. Jaya
Small group.
Yes, Maharaj. And then the local Portland people are here. Some of them, I mean, most of them, but
Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachalini Nirvisesa Sandhyaji Paschatya Desakalini Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. What's the deal here? Can we stop fooling around? Thanks. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13. Summary, right? Just summarize. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13. What's the title of the chapter 13? Nature, Enjoyer, and Consciousness. Nature, Enjoyer, and Consciousness. Chapter 13 comes after chapter 12. And chapter 12 is entitled Devotional Service. And a little, just step back a bit from overview of Bhagavad Gita. One way to look at Bhagavad Gita is there's 18 verses and there's 3 main topics. 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals how much? This boy in the gray sweatshirt. How much is 6 plus 6 plus 6? You got it. You sure? Okay, good. One of the ways of analyzing or the overview of Bhagavad Gita is there's 3 main topics. The central topic, this is Baladev Vijayabhusan. The central topic is Bhakti. And that's the middle 6 chapters. And then there's the first 6 chapters. Of course, there's many subject matters within the first 6 chapters, but emphasis upon detached work, Karma Yoga, perform prescribed duties, ma paleshu kadachana, karma nevadikaraste ma paleshu kadachana. If you're from Gujarat, that's the most important verse in the Bhagavad Gita, I've been told by Gujaratis. The essence of perform prescribed duties without attachment to the results. And over here is emphasis, not exclusive, but Gyan Yoga. Try to reach the Supreme through strong presentation of knowledge, and with knowledge detachment also, because the detachment is important in all phases of yoga. And the middle is bhakti. See if I can remember. It's been a while since I've described this. What our acharyas describe, supposing you have some family heirloom, some wealth that is passed down from generation to generation, where do you keep it? You put it at the front gate? You put it in your backyard? Put it safely somewhere in the middle of the house. Bhakti is in the middle. Supposing there's a procession and there's the king or the VIP or the most important person. Does he go in the front, at the end, or in the middle? Goes in the middle. And then another comparison is the construction of a house. Anyways, same idea. Bhakti is in the middle. Bhakti is in the middle of Bhagavad Gita. It doesn't mean the other parts of Bhagavad Gita are, just leave them to the side because they're non-essential. They're subordinate and subsidiary to that which gives them real strength, which is detached work. For what purpose? If you if you're not attached to the work, where does the work go? To the Supreme. But it's not just offering the result to the Supreme, it's performing activities for the Supreme. Thus, detached work in the performance of prescribed duties is a subset. But emphasis on the system of yoga that's receiving focus. So since the middle part, I'm looking at our scholar in the front row here. Nudge him so he knows I'm talking to him. Where does the final 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita begin? The first 6 chapters begin or end with, first 6 chapters end with chapter 6, right? And then the next 6 chapters, 6 plus 6 is 12. 6 plus 6 is 12. So the final 6 begins with chapter 13. I'm making sure that you're going to be really attentive because I've got another quiz question for you. It's one way to get young people to pay attention when they think they've got to check a box for the answer to a question. So chapter 12 is devotional service. And there's a verse 7 in chapter 12 where Krishna promises that he's the swift deliverer of one who is engaged in devotional service. So now having chapter, that's a bridge verse or a promise that Krishna makes in chapter 12 that it's going to help be fulfilled in chapter 13 by giving something that's already been given before, but now is being expanded more completely. So that's Sankhya. So another, those of you that like to read Prabhupada's books, like to read Bhagavad Gita in particular, there are 3 sections in Bhagavad Gita where Sankhya is the focus. And the first section is in the first half of chapter 2, or the first part of what Krishna is giving instructions, which is the first part of chapter 2, because chapter 1 is setting the scene. And Krishna's instructions as the teacher, the Adi Guru, begins in chapter 2, first half. And the first half is Sankhya. Is that right? First half is Sankhya, because the division between the first half and the second half comes at verse 39 of chapter 2, where Krishna says, he says it very explicitly. Thus far, I have explained Sankhya. Now I'm going to explain Buddhi Yoga. So the first instruction that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita is Sankhya. And at the end of chapter 6, which is the first division, he says that of all systems of yoga, one of them is the Uttama form of yoga, the best. And what's that one? Bhakti. And he says Bhakti has two parts. Bhakti is what the body does and what the mind does. And what the mind does is madgate nantaratmana. And what the body does is shraddhavan, with faith, bhajate. Bhajate. Bhaj is the dhatu, the root word for bhakti. And specifically it means what the senses are engaged in and objects of the senses, as opposed to pratyahara, where the senses are withdrawn from the objects of the senses. The topmost is engaging the senses with objects of the senses, with faith. The mind absorbed in Krishna. Subtle and devotional, doing for Krishna, everything. Then the beginning of chapter 7 comes another Krishna says, I'm going to explain to you how to. Lots of devotees like to ask how-to questions. Just read Bhagavad Gita. The how-to answers are there. Krishna doesn't lie. He keeps his word. He's going to explain how to. And one of the first things that Krishna speaks about in the how-to section is Sankhya. What's that? So Sankhya, one way of saying what Sankhya is divisions of matter and divisions of spirit. So in the Sankhya section, in the first Sankhya section, he only gives two. He doesn't give details. There's the body and there's the soul. And we belong to the category of soul. In chapter 7, he gives 8 divisions of matter, not just matter, but 8 divisions of matter. What are those 8 divisions of matter? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. That's 5, right? Oh, scholar. Is that 5? No, what is it? How many? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. How many is that? I think I picked the wrong person. You're very unresponsive. What's wrong? Am I intimidating you or something? Let's try your sister. Earth, water, fire, ether. That's 5, right? 5. And then mind, intelligence, and false ego. That's, 3 plus 5 is 8. Is that right? Okay, he's confirming. So there's 8 divisions of matter. And aside from those 8 divisions of matter, there's another Prakriti, but it's Para Prakriti. There's Bina Prakriti and there's Para Prakriti. Separated energy and transcendental energy. They're both categories of Prakriti. And then there's one entity, that's Krishna, who's the controller of both. The separated energy and the spiritual energy. That's chapter 7, Sankhya. It's quick, 3 verses, but it's Sankhya. Divisions of matter, divisions of spirit. And then in the final 6, it starts with chapter 13, and it's a whole Sankhya section. It's a Sankhya section. Well, at least that's how it starts. And the Sankhya section, it goes from what's in chapter 2, which is just 2, then it becomes 8, then it becomes 24. In chapter 13 is 24. So for just so that you can be a little uncomfortable or challenged, at least, here's Kapila Dev. Kapila Dev. Everyone with me? Kapila Dev. Kapila Dev taught Sankhya Yoga. I mean, he didn't just teach Sankhya Yoga. He taught, what do you do with it? What do you do with Sankhya Yoga? You engage in meditation on the spirit side, and then you engage in devotional service. Kapila Dev's teaching spans several chapters, and there's 2 chapters, one chapter dedicated to Sankhya, that's chapter 26, and then 2 chapters dedicated directly to devotional service, because that's where the train goes. If you get on the Sankhya train, that's where it's going. Bhakti. Same in Bhagavad Gita. So chapter 26 is the Sankhya chapter. Chapter 26 is called elements of material creation. No, that's Canto 11. It's fundamental principles of material nature, chapter 26. At the end of the purport of text 18, so 3, you can look it up later, 3:26:18, last paragraph. Outside the body of the conditioned soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead remains as the time factor. According to the Sankhya system of philosophy, there are 25 elements. The 24 elements already described, plus the time factor, equals 24 plus 1, 25. According to some learned philosophers, the super soul is included to make a total of 26 elements. So we have 2, we have 8, we have 24, we have 25, we have 26. Now here's 11th canto, Uddhava Gita, where Uddhava asks Krishna, my dear Lord, O Master of the universe, how many different elements of creation have been enumerated by the great sages? I have heard you personally describe a total of 28. And you list them. Now, this is including the categories of spirit within the Sankhya. So there's God, that's spirit, the Jiva, that's spirit. The Mahatattva, it's not in the list over here. Then the false ego, 5 gross elements, 10 senses, the mind, 5 subtle objects of perception, and the 3 modes of nature. Well, that's in the category Prakriti, but it's not the same as part of the 24, and therefore the number expands up to 28. And not listed here is intelligence, by the way. Although it's there in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking intelligence. But some authorities say there are 26 elements, while others cite 25, or else 7, 9, 6, 4, or 11. And even others say there are 17, 16, or 13. Is your head spinning yet? What did each of these sages have in mind when he calculated the creative elements in such different ways? Oh, Supreme, Eternal, kindly explain this to me. So what's Krishna going to say? Because all material elements are present everywhere, it is reasonable that different learned brahmanas have analyzed them in different ways. All such philosophers, this is imperative or very important. All such philosophers spoke under the shelter of my mystic potency, and thus they could say anything, without contradicting the truth. So there's different models. I hope you're convinced by now. There's different models, and Krishna is authorizing the authenticating the different model. It's not just come up with any number and spin the dial and it's okay. But those that are authorized, qualified brahmanas, acting under Krishna's spiritual potency, they can analyze in different ways. So there's different models, and it's quite okay. So get used to there's different models because it's quite okay. It's seeing the same, the purport says, it's seeing the same thing. They're just looking at it in a different angle, and therefore they're describing according to different angles. So chapter 13 is Sankhya. And chapter 13 begins with verse 1. And in verse 1 of chapter 13, there's 6 topics: matter and spirit, matter and spirit, matter and spirit. Sankhya. Now, he doesn't say matter and spirit 3 times, but he, purusha, Prakriti and purusha, matter and spirit. Jnanam and Gayam, knowledge and the object of knowledge. Field of activities, Kshetra and Kshetragya, the knower of the field of activities. Matter and spirit, matter and spirit, matter and spirit. That's how it starts. It's the beginning part of the next 6 chapters, and it's starting with Sankhya. It tells us something. It's important. And it's also good to know that, good to keep in mind, there are different models. So don't be upset when you hear a different model from an authorized source. There's different ways of looking at the same thing and describing the same thing in a different way. It's quite okay. So that's the first verse. And now the next set of verses is 3 topics are being answered or responded to. The 3 topics that are being responded to are the field of activities, or Kshetra and Kshetragya. There's an important word in that set of verses. This important word is tu, or tu, because there's the field of activities and there's the knower of the field of activities, and they're different. And Krishna says, aside from the living entity that's the knower of the field of activities, there's a supreme living entity who also knows not just your field of activities, but all field of activities. Kshetragya cha, not tu, but cha. Mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. I mean, it's one of my favorite expressions. Prabhupada says, in one word, cha, Krishna has defeated Mayavad philosophy. Meaning, to say there's only one entity, there's only Brahman, and it's all smoothie, there isn't any variegatedness within Brahman. Krishna defeats it just by saying, aside from the Kshetra, there's cha. There's also one who knows all fields. So, field of activities, knower of the field of activities, and the supreme living entity. So we have some distinction about field of activities and knower of the field of activities. It's important. Then comes knowledge and the process of knowledge. Process of knowledge, Prabhupada uses the process of knowledge in an interesting way. The process of knowledge is devotional service. It's in the description of the process of knowledge. It's a set of verses. It's a very important set of verses, verses 8 through 12. They're clustered together in Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, and there's 20 items. That is knowledge. There's 20 items of knowledge. Does that mean there's different ways of looking at things. So it's a nice way to look at things. It's Krishna's nice way of looking at things. But that, what is to be known, or the process of knowledge. And in the process of knowledge, of the list of 20, it's important. Prabhupada writes in the first paragraph of this long purport that there's one item of the 20 that all the other items are resting upon. And the one item is the process of knowledge. And that's unalloyed devotional service to Krishna. And how does one get access to unalloyed devotion to Krishna? By another one of the 20 items of knowledge. And that's worship of the spiritual master, Acharya Upasana. So those two then deliver the other items. The process of knowledge delivers knowledge. Bhakti's devotional service, Mai Chananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhichari. Avyabhichari means undivided. Mai Cha Ananya Yogena. Ananya Yoga. No other system of yoga than this one. Bhakti, on pure devotional service. Delivers knowledge. And to get that, worship of the spiritual master. Upasana. Acharya Upasana. And then comes all the others. Amanitvam, Adambitvam, etc. Humility and pridelessness. Isn't it? This Adambitvam, it also appears in Shikshashtaka. Doesn't it appear in Shikshashtaka? Is humility and pridelessness within Shikshashtaka? Those Shikshashtaka number 3. When Lord Chaitanya says, unfortunate as I am, I have no attraction for the holy name. Sounds like some of the rest of us. No attraction for the holy name. We're chanting, but where's the taste? We're doing because we have faith that this is a means to help us become spiritually clean. But the taste is another thing. So the humility, one feeling oneself lower than the straw on the street. Trinadapi sunechena. Toror iva sahishnana, being more tolerant than a tree. Amanina, manadena, amanina, same root. Amanitvam. Amanina, manadena. That's maybe even the hardest one of them all. Having no expectation of respect in return for being a good person, doing kindnesses for others and all those things. No expectation. Serving just because that's who you are, regardless of whether it's whatever it is. That's the tough one. But when one can achieve that, so that's an item of knowledge out of the 20, amanitvam, adambitvam, kshantir, arjavam. So these are principles of knowledge, and the process of knowledge is devotional service itself. Look at this. We're halfway through chapter 13 already in the overview of things. So what comes next? He's described the field of activities and the knower of the field of activities. He described knowledge and the object of knowledge. So there's another pair that's remaining. The soul, this is the fourth one. The soul can know the super soul, who is the ultimate object of knowledge. Only the devotees can understand the field of activities, kshetra, the body, the process of knowledge, devotional service, and both the soul and the super soul. So the object of knowledge is not, this is Sankhya. There's, according to different models, there are different ways of looking at it. But in addition to the 24 material elements, or you can add in, as was described in chapter 26 of Canto 3, you can add in time, or you can add in the living entity and the Supreme. So, but there's two, cha. So there's the living entity, knower of the field of activities, and knower of all fields of activities, and there's time. And time moves the whole machine. Or say it reverse, without time, nothing moves. Say it forwards. To move things, you have to have time. And it's a manifestation of Krishna. Kala Shakti is a manifestation of Krishna. Time I am, the destroyer of all things. But time doesn't just destroy things. Time brings things into being, which is a destruction of whatever it was before to create something that it is in the next moment, and destroys that next moment to the next moment. So it creates and destroys. It's a Shakti, an energy of Krishna, through which Krishna is everywhere present. So then this object of knowledge, although the topic is Sankhya, the clue, it's important to get the clue, the key is undivided devotional service. And then one can understand knowledge through the process of knowledge. You can understand these different divisions. You can understand lots of things. Without it, you can't understand anything properly. You can understand something improperly, but you can't understand anything properly. So Sankhya is needed. For what reason? It's to help us get prepared. So we have to read Krishna's words in Bhagavad Gita to be prepared to enter into that middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the devotional service, up to pure devotional service. It's just 2 more sections. We're done. Well, the overview is done. Next, Krishna explains Prakriti and Purusha. It's not a new topic, it's just another way of looking at the same topic. Prakriti, so Purusha is the living entity. Enjoyer of Prakriti is Purusha. And oh, by the way, there's Parama Purursha. So there's Purusha, Parama Purursha, and Prakriti. So really the Purusha is to be enjoyed by the Parama Purursha, whether it's living entity or matter. That's chapter 7, Sankhya. And here it is in chapter 13, Sankhya. Material nature causes all material changes and effects. Now, that's Prakriti being moved by the force of time. Because without the force of time, you don't have change. But there's always time, so there's always change. And then the effects from this to that. And then that changes into something else and changes into something else. So an important picture that Krishna wants us to receive from him is Prakriti brings about those changes in conjunction with time. And of course, the living entity, because it's like the body's growing. We say growing. Prabhupada would correct that nomenclature and say, or way of looking at things, it's not growing, it's changing. the change of body from this to that, to that, to that, to that is called growing. But it's change of body, change of body, change of body, change of body, change of body. Material nature. Material nature causes all material changes and effects. And that's an important, this is just a little summary of this chapter. And what about the living entity? The living entity suffers or enjoys according to their association with the modes of nature. Does anybody here want to volunteer what that verse is in Bhagavad Gita? It's an important verse. Chapter 13 has several important verses to learn. Say the whole thing slowly, please. Slowly. Let's just stop there. Hetu means cause. Hetu Prakriti Uchate. It is said that Prakriti is the Hetu of, say the first line again.
Karya Karana Kartatve.
Karya Karanam, the cause and effect. Karya Karanam, Kartate. Hetu Prakriti Uchate. Means material nature is the cause of all causes and effects, the hetu of the causes and effects. Material nature, Prakriti, is said, hetu Prakritir Uchate. Then,
Purusha Sukha Dukkana.
Purusha Sukha Dukkanam. The living entity is the cause of his sukha and his dukkha. How? By associating with the modes of nature and making karma choices. So living entity is said to be the cause of his good fortune, ill fortune, or happiness and distress, sukha and dukkha. There's an interaction. It's not, there's this bucket over here, and there's that bucket over there. They don't mix. They mix. Living entities mix with Prakriti. And they mix with Prakriti according to guna. Because the list that Krishna spoke to Uddhava includes the three modes of nature. So you mix, it has everything to do with Prakriti and Purusha. The Purusha has a desire to enjoy. Liberated Purushas have a desire to enjoy. They enjoy in relation to the Parama Purursha. But supposing you close that door, the Parama Purursha door is closed, and you're in the material world. So now, but you still want to enjoy. So it's according to the modes of nature. And then we create our happiness and distress, our good fortune, ill fortune. It's not Prakriti's responsible or Krishna's responsible, we're responsible. And they're just reciprocating with our association with the modes of nature. The choices that we're making brings our own happiness and distress. That's a really good answer, if you understand Sankhya, to the question people ask, some people ask, especially when they're down, why did God create a world where people suffer? You know that one. There's different ways of asking it. He's all powerful and he's all loving. So why does he create a place where people suffer? It's indirectly it's saying he's not all powerful, he's not all loving. You know, why do bad things happen to good people? You know that one. There was a book written about it by a Jewish rabbi. Why do bad things happen to good people? You know what the answer is? It's a big, thick book, but a short summary is he made a mistake. We're responsible. Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, text 22 is teaching us we're responsible. We're making choices, A, to try to find happiness separate from the source of happiness, Parama Purursha, and B, we're making a selection of the menu of varieties of modes of nature by which we're trying to enjoy independently of the Supreme, or what real enjoyment is. So we're responsible. Sadasad yoni, janmasu. Yoni means place of birth, like the womb of a mother is the place of birth. Yoni, janmasu. Sad asad, good fortune, ill fortune arise from how we associate with the modes of nature. There's a big long menu. And we can sometimes select this one thinking happiness is over here. That didn't work. Let me try the one over here. And there's no end to it. In this lifetime and lifetime after lifetime, there's no end to it. But there is an end to it. There's no end to it by that approach, but by the approach of transcendental knowledge that says there's no happiness over there. In fact, it's not over there at all. It's within, and that within is yoga, or the soul connecting with the Supreme Soul. So Sankhya helps us, according to the way Rupa Goswami has described this. Sankhya, or knowledge, helps one get a foothold in devotional service. A very nice way of depicting it. But the real essence is not gather more knowledge. The real essence is Mai Chananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini. That's what the Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, texts 8 through 12 is teaching us. The items of knowledge, the process of knowledge. So we only have one section left. We're completed our assignment, an overview of chapter 13. The vision of those who have knowledge. The final 8 verses of chapter 13. Summary. Those who see the distinction between the body, its owner, and the supersoul, and who recognize the process of liberation, which is devotional service, can attain the supreme goal. So Sankhya leads to bhakti. Bhakti done with proper understanding. It's an assist to reach unalloyed devotional service. But it's, which is the cause and which is the effect becomes part of the question. It's not like gather more knowledge and then I can come to pure devotional service. On the other hand, if one is not inquisitive, so say positive, if one is inquisitive, then you want to go to the right source to get knowledge. And knowledge doesn't just mean information. Knowledge means, how do I live my life in such a way I make my connection with Krishna once again, unobstructed by anything. Supposing one doesn't have that level of inquisitiveness, they just want to be comfortable, then you're going to have unsteady bhakti. On again, off again, on again, off again, on again, off again. That's not nice. But, it's something we're quite familiar with. Unsteady bhakti is the territory that we're mostly familiar with. And then steady bhakti, and then unalloyed bhakti. So the process of bhakti yields knowledge. One goes further and further and further. And with that, then humility. Not like I know so much, now I'm a smart guy. That's the tendency if bhakti is not the driving force. It's real easy to become proud of anything. You name it, become proud of anything. Having some wealth or being renounced. One can be proud of having wealth or being renounced. One can be, just find anything that's out there, and it's easy to become proud. So an essential element of knowledge is unalloyed devotional service. Pride has no place. So in its place comes humility and offering all respect to others, and all the other features. Well, tolerance is a good one because it's in Shikshashtakama. No, you're going along the day, your path of life, and all of a sudden here comes some great misfortune, unexpected. It happens. Now, where's your first response? So it's going to vary. And for the unalloyed devotee, the first response is they may be puzzled by the circumstance, but their faith in Krishna doesn't waver. And then the desire to do that which is pleasing to Krishna follows the faith in Krishna part. And then when one maintains that position, Krishna gives guidance. It may not happen in the next moment, but Krishna will give us guidance. Rather than just get, for example, here's one, there's so many for examples. Somebody's doing something and they're doing well at that something. And they're thinking, wow, Krishna must be pleased because, whatever the reasons are. I know from reading of the writings of our acharyas that this is pleasing to Krishna and it's going well. So Krishna must be pleased. And the next moment, surprisingly, it all shuts down, like it happened in Prabhupada's life, for example. I was just listening to Prabhupada describe this. And he's reciting a verse and he said, I have my practical experience. Things were going really well. And all of a sudden it shut down. And he recited the verse from Krishna, from Bhagavatam. Krishna sometimes shows special favor to the devotee and takes away everything. Now he's Hari. When he takes away everything, he gives everything. He has so many hands, you can't hold on to things. He's going to take everything. Everything. Why? So one takes deeper shelter in him. And then with same so many hands, he can give everything. So the essence is the relationship, but also the essence of the relationship is that Krishna wants to, when he shows special favor, to help draw some persons closer to him by taking things away. And when you see things are disappearing, where'd they go? Like, what's wrong? Why do bad things happen to good people? That's right, I'm a good people. Amongst the good people category, why is this happening? So we may not understand in the next moment what Krishna wants. You keep asking it, and it may not be clear for quite some time. And then after some time, it may become quite clear. What he wants is our heart. I mean, he's the faculties of life are going to be taken from us eventually anyway. So what are we going to hold on to? Nothing. But one thing, your relationship with Krishna is not going to be taken from you. So when things, it's one of the in this morning's lecture, I was hearing Prabhupada speaking. So for this reason, some people they're reluctant to engage in devotional service because they'll think Krishna may take everything from me. And I want things. So I'll go with my worship elsewhere to get things. And I don't want things taken from me. Thank you. Then the essence is not relationship. The essence is business. I'll do and I'll receive. Business. So what's that consciousness where you're the essence of receiving something is not the essence? What's that consciousness? It's a consciousness of love. It's a consciousness of an unrestricted, unalloyed, loving relationship. So we're not there yet. We're not there yet. But the train that we're on is taking us there. Slowly. Not too abruptly. Maybe that's good or maybe it's unfortunate, but it's not so abrupt, generally speaking, unless Krishna shows some really special favor. But otherwise, it's gentle, and we let go of things, and we get more of Krishna association instead, in different ways. And that's our life. So the essence is Sankhya section, chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, it's expanding on what is said in chapter 7. It's expanding, which is expanding on what is said in chapter 2. And then we go on to the Bhagavatam, and it's expanding further and further. So keep going. From your study of Bhagavad Gita, read it again and again and try to understand it carefully, thoroughly, try to follow it. And then the door is open for Srimad Bhagavatam study. And you'll understand more and more and more from Srimad Bhagavatam also. And finally, that understanding is meant to help bring us closer to the position of Maya Chananya Yogena, Bhakti Avyabhicharini, undivided devotional service. Ananya Bhakti, undivided devotion. No, Ananya, no other but one thing. Okay. So there's a room full of people here, and a kitchen full of people too. Any discussion on this topic? We have some way you want to proceed? You look like you're ready to direct things. Okay, there's online people too. Okay. Okay. Our online people, don't be upset. We're not ignoring you. We're just going to deal with the people in the room first, and then you're next. Is that right? Yes? Okay, that's good. So those of you that are online, get ready, because we're going to call on you. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaji, thank you for the beautiful lecture. I just had one question.
One question.
I actually have two. I'll start
Two
with
questions.
one.
Okay.
So my first question is, for a dumb soul like me, can you break down how does Sankhya changes into Bhakti? Like you said, from Sankhya you go to Bhakti.
It has everything to do with your association. So with right association, Sankhya will lead you to Bhakti if you have a Bhakta teaching you Sankhya. Supposing you don't have a Bhakta teaching you Sankhya, supposing you're a scholar they're learning Sankhya from another scholar. There's no Bhakti. It's not going to lead to devotional service.
But what is Sankhya?
Sankhya is the analysis. Literally, Sankhya means to count. So there's categories of matter. That's why we had this discussion. Is it 2? Is it 8? Is it 24? What is it? Is it 11? Is it, so it's count. Categories of matter. And over here, there's spirit and categories of spirit. That's what Sankhya is. So what Sankhya is doing is helping your intelligence. Your intelligence is discerning or discriminating. There's this and there's that. To discern one thing from another thing is a function of intelligence. So when intelligence is directed towards the category of spirit, because that's who you are, and then there's the Supreme Spirit, the door is opening for Bhakti. But what makes Bhakti happen is a Bhakta. Supposing you're illiterate, supposing you're a simple person, and you don't really I don't get it, it's too complicated. You're nodding. So
yeah, I definitely feel so dumb right now.
Okay. So then with faith, let me engage in Bhakti, because by engaging in Bhakti, it removes the covering and awakens what's covered. The heads are moving. I'm just trying to get eye contact with her. Could you just, yeah, very good. Thank you. You're very kind. But you don't have to cut your head off, just tilt. Okay, so there's a nice verse amongst 17,999 other nice verses from Srimad Bhagavatam that says specifically that all that you need to know arises from bhakti naturally. Knowledge and detachment arise from bhakti naturally. Knowledge and detachment arise from bhakti naturally. So all you need to do is bhakti. But supposing the heart is not completely pure yet, let's just close our eyes and imagine that's the case. So my idea of what bhakti is may not be right on target. So I need a good bhakta to guide me to stay on target. But if I engage in bhakti with proper guidance, that knowledge will become yours because it's already within. It's just covered. So do the scrub-a-dub program, make Chaita Darpana Marjanam, make the heart clean. And then that which is underneath that which is being cleaned is that knowledge. It awakens. And so then when that awakened, so now the soul is energized instead of dull. It's energized by bhakti under proper guidance. Then when you go back to the same Bhagavad Gita sections or Bhagavatam sections that you couldn't understand before, you're scratching your head saying, I don't get it. You start to get it. The purpose of getting it is not, so now you have information in your information basket and you got a good supply of information in your information basket. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to be more discerning what the process is and what the goal of that process is. But you start wherever you are. You may be, maybe covered. You may not be so discerning, so intellectual, so getting the details straight. Some people get the details straight. They don't have devotion, so they don't really go anywhere. But pride territory. I know so much. So you don't have to worry about that one. You just worry about get the devotion properly guided, devotional activity. So, the very simple one is chanting Hare Krishna. Everyone can do that. Then comes chanting without offense. Oh. So then you learn what the offenses are and you chant without offense. And then you go back and read Bhagavad Gita, things that you couldn't understand before. It becomes a little bit more clear, and a little bit more clear, a little bit more clear. It becomes very clear. So you're properly guided on the path of bhakti. How's that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure. I hope you feel a little more encouraged now.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to understand it properly, it's like the Sankhya that we're talking about, the material versus the spirit. Eventually, the idea is to move away from the material and go towards the spirit.
There's a detachment in all systems of yoga.
Yeah.
Vairagya is in all systems of yoga.
Yeah. So then my follow-up question is, this morning I was watching Srila Prabhupada's video of, I think it's called The Enchanted Journey of an Acharya. It's like a 15-minute video on YouTube. Very amazing. If people haven't seen it, they should definitely watch it. And I was talking to my mom. She's been going through a phase wherein you have family, and then you have extended family, and then you have neighbors, and then you have like the whole gang or a village around you, wherein there was some distressing situation. And I was trying to tell to her that, okay, whatever that is, just chant. For her, the question is like, where is faith versus where is devotion? And the same thing happened in the Srila Prabhupada's video. He said, when I came to the US, I didn't have devotion, but what I had was faith for Krishna. And that's what made me like stay on the path and like follow the process. So for me, it's like for me to like kind of, I'm literally asking it for my mom. It's like, I have to make her understand, it's like a chicken and an egg situation, right? You don't know if faith comes first and devotion follows, or devotion comes first or faith follows.
Faith comes first. Adau Shraddha.
Okay.
Then,
I mean,
then Sadhu Sangha.
okay.
And then Bhajana Kriya.
But when somebody cannot do sadhu sangha or bhajan kriya because of the situation,
Anyone, don't say they cannot do.
they
That knows no such thing. Or Prabhupada's, can't is a word in the fullest dictionary. So there's no can't, because it's of the soul. There's no material. That's another verse in the second chapter of the first canto. There's nothing that creates and nothing that stops. Ahaitukiya pratiyata. There's nothing that's the hetu, and there's nothing that stops it. Devotional service, you can't say can't. That's a rubber crutch.
I mean, my dad has Alzheimer's, so my mom has to take care of him. So she cannot
Okay,
go
but
out of
that's
the
okay.
house.
She can do what
So-
she can do.
Yeah.
Within
yes.
limitations, she can do what she can do. But you can't say can't. She can say taking care of her dad or her husband, your dad, is part of her devotional service to Krishna, because here's a spirit soul, etc. It's covered or uncovered consciousness.
It's covered.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's work on scrub. Chaita Darpana Marjanam.
Yeah. And being like a child, it's so difficult to like kind of be in a situation where you kind of help, and I mean you can't be a guide, but you can help them. And it's
Well, that's a whole other topic. Being
you,
Krishna's instrument and being the hero. That you're going to go and fix people's problems.
Yeah.
That's two different, very, 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 very worlds apart different things. One is material, the other is spiritual. Or at least directionally can be spiritual. Be Krishna's instrument. And people are making their choices and they have to live their lives based upon the circumstances of their life. You don't try to be the hero. You share with her this, you have the link for this dreaded drama triangle video. You're aware of it? Share it with her. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaji.
Okay. Up front.
Online.
You have something?
Online, Maharaj.
Let's do one more up front. Who's going to be the online person? You are? Who are? Yo, Parama Purursha, you're going to?
Do you have a question?
Let's go. No, right here. And then we're going to go online, then we'll come back to you. You have something? Okay, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
He's just sitting in the front, so I saw him first. I'm sorry.
Thank you for your wonderful lecture, Maharaj. As far as I understand, there's two main things to advancing in devotional service. It's our effort and our shraddha, our faith, and it's also Krishna's mercy. So those things combined can help us progress. My question is, how does Krishna positively interfere in our lives? Like, as you mentioned, by, for example, like removing away things or maybe connecting us to devotees. And how does he do that in sort of all stages of our devotional path?
There's no limit to how. He's not confined to, there's a box and he goes to this box, to that box. It's very, 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 very variegated, and it's customized for each of us, and it's going to be very different for everyone. And so be happy that you have a customized relationship with Krishna. That's however, whatever fits.
So even as a complete non-devotee with no
the soul has devotion inside. The complete non-devotee is just covered. That's all.
Okay.
So let's go online. Do we pass the microphone back? Online, back. Thank you. We'll get to her after some online.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I have this question online by one of the participants. So why in Kalyuga do people, and especially the young generation, why are they becoming so selfish, going away from bhakti, losing values and culture? So that's the question.
Influence of Kali. Prayana Payushak Shabya. This age of Kali is filled with bad qualities. Dosha and the day, and it's getting darker. It's just the nature of progress of the age of Kali. You turn the light out, it becomes darker. It's just getting darker and darker because it's the age of Kali. Or the covering becomes thicker. And when we've been, the very first verse of our other topic, this light of the Bhagavad, is the answer to this person's question. When ignorance covers the living entity, then one becomes forgetful of who I am, what's my real happiness and everything. And then one starts to get, self-centered. Ego rules. And the mind is the instrument of the ego and so forth. It's another way of saying the same thing. We have another online?
Yes, Maharaj.
Go ahead.
Different question. Kind of one of the questions often asked, to the soul that attained liberation, is it ever reborn again?
What happens to the soul that attains liberation? Well, liberation means there's no longer contact with matter. I mean, if we're going to, this sounds like the backdoor way of asking the fall of the jiva question. Sounds like. Prabhupada's response, is, there are different people that have different ideas. One time, more than one time, Prabhupada explained that free will is intrinsic to the soul, which means that in the liberated soul, it's not that free will becomes anesthetized or lobotomized. There's no longer any more free will. You're there and you don't have any free will. Free will is operative at all times because we're part of the Supreme who has unlimited free will. So Prabhupada's explanation is there always the potential with free will to misuse free will. But the good news is Krishna's protection is there. So we don't, because Krishna's protection is there. So the short answer to this question is liberated means Purnar Janma Na. No more birth. Okay, so let's do in the room discussion topic. You're on. I hope you didn't forget.
Yeah, thank you for the nice speech. I have a follow-up question. I was trying to ask the same question that just went about
This one?
Yeah. So it got asked. So the follow-up question that I have is, how do you know that your spirit will get liberated?
How do we know that what?
Like, how do you know that your spirit is going to get liberated? Like, because there will be a lot of us that are trying to get through that path, and there are multiple ways to go there. But like at the end, or maybe before that, like, how do you know that you have achieved that level?
How do we know that we have?
We have achieved the level, and then our
See,
spirit will
say
be
it slower.
liberated. Yeah.
I'm trying to understand your words. She's good at saying things slowly.
So, Maharaj, she was asking, how do you know that you've achieved the level of devotion which qualifies you to achieve liberation? How do you feel?
That's it? There's a bell. The bell rings. You there? Bing. No. Generally speaking, it's the getting there is decreasing. This is another question that's often asked, which is, how do you know you're progressing? Your question is, how do you know that you're there or qualified to no more birth in this material world? So progressing means the attraction to transcendence, the topics of Krishna, for example, is becoming very strong. And with that becoming very strong, the other is diminishing. The attraction for the temporary and trying to be the enjoyer of the temporary, it's subsiding. That's an indication of progress. Now, that's not your question, but that's another common question. When you're let's take this Mai Chananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini. No, it's nice to not know Sanskrit. Then you can hear the explanation of Sanskrit. Then, oh, that's it. Ananya, Anya means other, and you add the prefix a in front, it becomes no other. Ananya Bhakti Yogena. So there's nothing else. Or here's another same way of describing, where the desire for serving Krishna has no competitor. And the two categories of competitorship is karma and gyan, or wanting to become the enjoyer of material things, or wanting to become one with the Supreme by knowing the Supreme through speculative knowledge. When that's gone, this is a definition given by Rupa Goswami, responsive to your question. It's cultivation like that. So when the distractions are diminished, those two main categories, but the primary thing is, I simply want to please Krishna. And there isn't something else. So you're eligible when there isn't something else. And there is this one thing that's very strong. It's not just negation, it's the increase of that which is who you are. And when that has magnified or amplified or matured to the point where there isn't something else can come along and your mind doesn't go there because there isn't the desire for something else. You're satisfied. There's a verse in the Bhagavatam that says the same thing. It's really easy. Make it easier than so many words. As with the eating process, supposing you've fasted before for some purposes, you've had that experience. Okay, so when you fast, something happens. You start to feel not only hungry, your body feels a little weak, and you're not necessarily even eager to eat something, but you're just like, so you have those sensations. And from one who has been fasting, the eating process has the opposite effect, and it's universal. Hunger subsides, strength returns to the body. When it was feeling weak, now it's strong. And at a certain point, you can tell the person that wants you to take something more, you can say, no, thank you, I've had enough. That's satisfaction. That's the qualification. Satisfied to the point where there isn't something else that you want. Bhaktir, what's the beginning part? Yes. Bhaktir, Parisha, I know the verse. Para, Isha. Isha means controller. Para, Isha is the supreme controller. You have a desire to serve the supreme. And you don't have anything else. There's one Para Isha, Anubhav. You have feelings. for the supreme. And there's detachment from other things. That's the eligibility. You want to serve, you have a clear sense of who is the para isha and the feelings for that para isha, and there isn't attraction for other things. The bell rings. So we work towards that. We cultivate in that direction. That's sadhana. Something else in the room? And then we're going to go online again. And then they think we're going to end. Anything else in the room? Nothing else. We have online?
So Hare Krishna Maharaj. The question is, this is about in which sequence to read books. So after Bhagavad Gita, should we go to Srimad Bhagavatam or read the other books, smaller books by Srila Prabhupada? What sequence should be adopted after Bhagavad Gita?
There's no rule. I mean, some people like to have rules about things like this, but there's no rule. Go back and read Bhagavad Gita again, and you'll find things in Bhagavad Gita reading a second time you didn't understand it the first time. And read it again, you'll find things third time you didn't see the first and second time. So that's, I mean, there's no rule. You can start reading other things. But there's no rule. But you're reading, becoming quite familiar with Bhagavad Gita. And you can say the other Bhakti Shastri texts, Isha Upanishad, Nectar Devotion, Nectar of Instruction. Study, take Bhakti Shastri. I know somebody that's now teaching Bhakti Shastri, but before they began teaching Bhakti Shastri, they took Bhakti Shastri courses 6 times. They didn't go on to Bhagavatam. They just learned it again and again, and then they started teaching it. That's another option. What do you read next? But they like to read, so they're regularly reading. That's my answer. There's no fixed rule. Get yourself connected with a good teacher. That's a really good. Where do I go next? Make sure you have a good teacher, and the teacher may want to guide you in where you go next, along with what your interests are. Next, online.
Could you please succinctly describe the process of bhakti?
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's pretty succinct. Or here's another one. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. That's succinct. You engage your senses in the service of the master of the senses, which is another way of saying what the last verse of chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. You engage in practical activity with the senses in service to the master of the senses. That requires seeing things not as objects to satisfy my desire. Back to this young lady's question, not seeing objects as potential object for my enjoyment, but something that has its origin in Krishna, let me offer it to Krishna. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. Bhaktir Uchate. The preliminary part of that verse is letting go of the bodily conceptions of life called upadis. Upadi means an imposition on the mind of who we think we are. Misidentification with a designation that's not who I am. That's a short, succinct description of bhakti. One more?
Yes, Maharaj, this is the
one.
last one I have. If there are other questions, please post them now. So, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my most humble obeisances. What actions or day-to-day activities are to be practically taken up for a constant and unalloyed bhakti? Your servant, Acharya Ratna Das.
What activities should be taken up? So, read Nectar Devotion. There's 64 items. Find ones that fit you well, and you do them under the guidance of Rupa Goswami and his followers. So if you're asking for a list, the list is already given by Rupa Goswami. I'm sure you know the list, so I'm not sure how you want me to respond differently than refer you to Rupa Goswami's list of activities. There's 5 most important. I'll go there. This is also Rupa Goswami. 5 most important. You read Srimad Bhagavatam, worship the deity, chant the holy name, serve the Vaishnavas, and live in Portland. No, live in Vrindavan. If you can't live in Vrindavan, you can, in your mind, live in Vrindavan. You want to say something? He looks very enthusiastic and plus very senior, so we better give him the microphone. Last one. You're the last one.
So I have a doubt.
You do?
Yeah. Chapter 18, 66th verse. That is Sarva Dharman Parityaj Mamekam Sharanam Vraj. So my question is basically that when he says Sarva Dharman Parityaj, so you leave all the dharmas basically. And here in this context, we understand that dharma means karma also. So
wait a minute.
Sorry.
Say that again.
I'm
Dharma
saying
means karma?
Karma too, because as a duty, as karma.
No. But keep going. I disagree with the premise of your question.
Okay, so maybe the premise is wrong, so my understanding is wrong, because my question was that why he is asking what all he's including in
Sarva Dharma.
Yeah,
What's in that bucket?
Yeah.
That's what you want to know.
Yeah.
Okay. In the kitchen, we see 2 lights hanging from the ceiling. But they're connected to something up in the ceiling. So it's just, that's even better. There's a chandelier. I guess here's a chandelier. And supposing I disconnect the chandelier from the point of connection in the ceiling, and I'm just laying on the floor. It's not very functional, and it's not very attractive either. So it's not that Krishna is saying abandon the chandelier or abandon dharma, because it has a function. But you subordinate the function of dharma to one thing. What's that one thing? Mame kam sharanam. So what's in that category of the dharma? It's all things that are virtuous and to be done. It's not you trash them or discard them, but you subordinate them to one thing. Maichananya yogena bhakti ravyabhicharini. You subordinate all good things to that one thing, and then they have value. The value is their connection with that one thing. Without that one thing, they don't have the same value. The chandelier lying on the floor doesn't have, the crystal, okay, that's nice. But when it's suspended and the light's on, the light is shining through the crystal. It diffuses the light very beautifully. So it's the one thing. Mame kam sharanam. And all other things are subordinate to that one thing. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. Nice, robust group of people. Maybe it's because it's Friday night. I don't know. Is that it? Okay, so would you want to make some closing? Tell people what to do. How many online people?
Right now, 37. I think the peak was around 45.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Go ahead.
And so thank you so much, Maharaj, for extending your association and sharing such wonderful topics from chapter 13 and the question answer session from Bhagavad Gita. There's one request. Today is Ujjwal Prabhu right here, his birthday.
I figured it's somebody's birthday.
And Sukirtana as well. So there's a little cake.
A little
I
cake.
believe. If you could.
You want me to cut a little cut. Okay. Just that's go ahead. What else you want to say?
And yes, Maharaj, that's it. Thank you so much. Now, after the cake cutting, we'll have prasadam. And I think there's Mahaprasad that you would.
Yeah, I better have a wheelbarrow for the Mahaprasadam for all the people here. And the online 40, 45, 37 people. I'm looking at the screen. I should look at the camera.
Yes. Thank you so much for every batch of Bhagavad Gita. We have been very kind to have you come and share your realizations and share your association sadhu sangha with us. So I'm on behalf of the entire group. Thank you so much, Maharaj. So thank you everyone for joining online. We will end the call here, and we will see you all next week, Friday, same time, 6 o'clock, to complete the 13th chapter. Thank you everyone online.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
You, Hare
Thank you.
Hari Bol, Hare Krishna,
So
Prabhuji.
tomorrow we have 2 programs, one in the morning at 11 a.m., which is a deity welcoming ceremony that Maharaj will oversee.
Hare Krishna, Guruji.